Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to High Off Blue Hour, and in this video we're basically going to be talking about animating the body of a 2D character in Davinci Resolve. This isn't going to really focus any at all on facial expression animations and things like that. This is going to be more so body focused in terms of movement of arms and shoulders and the torso, chest, legs, the head as a whole, not facial expressions, but the cranium as a whole, those type of things. That's what this will be focused on. We're going to use a very rough animation that I've already created, and the idea is to see how things are attached, the body parts are attached as a whole, not really the actual artistic value of the creation. I don't know if you even care about the Punisher or anything at all anyway. But this is the Punisher. This is an image that was generated in Midjourney. I then took this image into Photoshop and removed the background, and then I further broke the image apart by separating it into its different body parts. So these are all the body parts that can move and that will be moving in this animation. So let's go ahead and go into the timeline. So what I did was I took a fusion composition from the effects tab here, dragged the fusion composition into the timeline, and it was originally supposed to be just a 5-second animation. It actually ended up being a little shorter, but we've got a 5-second fusion composition in the timeline, and then we went into fusion, and now this is the actual node structure of this animated character. This is everything. So before we look deeper at that node structure, which is going to be the brunt of this video really, let's take a look closer at the character and how they kind of look in motion. So this is and I got proxies going in terms of my timeline resolution, so you know the final version of this, which you will see, actually looks much clearer than this. So I'm gonna go ahead and highlight our media out node, and we're gonna press play and take a look at the rough version of this animation and how it looks in motion. And it looks very janky, obviously, and to further drive that home, how you can see the space, the separation between the lower body and the upper body in terms of the compositing and whatnot. That's fine. We're leaving all of that as is, because the point of the video is just attaching the pivot points and all the different things to make the different parts of your figure's body or your character's body move, and what you would do to achieve that effect. So it's not about perfectionism, it's more about just providing an example of the tools. So what we got here is the node structure, and so to create this, we already had the media out node in here because we created a fusion composition, so the media out node comes with that. But we dragged the media out node to the far right here, and then I went up here and I dragged down a background node, and then I clicked on the background node, dragged the alpha all the way down so that you would have a clear background, and then I started bringing in all of the different body parts. So along the top here, all of these nodes that are on the top of our structure here, these are all the different images that I showed you in the beginning of this video that I created in Photoshop. So we got our torso here, and I'll bring things over to the right side viewer so that they can be seen here. So we got our torso here, then we got our legs here, got the head, right arm, left arm, okay? And so then what we have here is below each of these nodes for the separate body parts, we have transform nodes and merge nodes that apply to those nodes. So for example, we got our torso here, it's going into a warper node because this warper is going to be used to create the breathing effect that's going to go on the chest, the kind of up and down rising of the chest area for the torso. And then that's going into a transform node because the transform node is going to be used to apply certain parameters specifically for the torso. And then that's going into a merge node because that merge node is going to carry and attach all of our torso information and connect it with our legs information, so those things will merge and kind of be together as part, kind of acknowledging that they're a part of the same system, a part of the same body. So for all of these body parts, legs, head, right arm, left arm, torso, they all have a transform node. And so the transform node, the important thing about that in this setup is that the transform node is going to allow you to attach and adjust your pivot points. And the pivot points are very important when it comes to, at least in this style of animation, or at least in this way that I animate 2D figures, the pivot point is very important. So why is it very important? Because it'll makes it so you can move the different parts of the body while keeping them attached to the body, keeping them attached to the torso. So what do I mean? So let's take a look at the legs here. So we're going to click on the transform node for the legs, the transform node that the legs are going into here. We're going to click on that, and then we're going to go over here into the inspector tab. And right here where you have pivot, you have the pivot X and then the Y for the pivot. This is where you adjust where the pivot points are. But for example, we're going to go down to angle for the legs. Now you see, actually, a better example, let's use the arms as an example. Let's go into the because that's the perfect example, actually, is the arm. So let's go to the right arm here, the transform node for the right arm. It's got its pivot here. These are specifically selected pivots. So now I'm going to adjust the angle on the right arm, and here's what happens. So as you see, as I adjust the angle, you see how the right arm is going up and it's going down. But you see it's attached. It's staying attached at the shoulder. That's a pivot. That's a pivot point. The reason it's staying attached at the shoulder there is because I manually, up here where it says pivot X and Y, I manually adjusted these so that the pivot would be right there over that shoulder point. And so that when I would adjust the angle, the arm can raise all around, but it stays attached at that shoulder point. So that allows me to do animations with keyframing where I can raise and lower the arm. Now the reason that's important is because let's say the pivot point was someplace different, what it would look like. So let's say, see, if I set the pivot point, let's do this. Go like there. Now if I set the pivot point down here, and then try to rotate the arm, changing the angle of the arm like I was to raise and lower the arm, you see what happens. The arm just kind of floats all around, just completely detaches from the body. It looks like it starts to turn, and the angle technically does change, but because of where the pivot point is at, it just looks completely weird, and the body and the arm detaches from the actual shoulder. But then when you move that, but if you have that pivot point at the right spot, then you do change the arm, or actually, let me change this back to 0. Get this arm back to 0, and then put this pivot point. Let's move it just a little bit more. And then now you can, and there's still imperfections that can happen. For example, even when I was doing this animation, I made sure not to raise the arm too high, because raising the arm too high, you start to really see some of that separation in between the separated PNG files. So I would raise, the highest I would raise the arm, I think, was somewhere around there, and then the lowest it would go is the arm would drop to about there. And so a similar thing with all the other parts, just go to the transform for the left arm, same thing, raise and move that left arm around. You see that pivot point is right there in the shoulder area, so that's where the arm stays attached. So it allows you to animate this left arm with keyframing, and you can keep that pivot point there. And likewise with really, let's even for the head, the cranium has a transform node that has a pivot point that I set as well, because the head does do a little bit of different kind of angles, subtle angles in the final animation. So again, the pivot point, that's a custom pivot point right there. And then you come down to angle, and see as I adjust the angle, see the head is moving a little bit, but it's staying attached to the quote unquote neck. You can't see the neck, but you know, obviously anatomically speaking, there should be a neck around there somewhere behind that face, right? So in the head, as you change the angle, because of that selected pivot point, the head stays attached to the body, and through keyframing you can animate the head, have it doing a, you know, shaking or whatever the case may be. Also, a little tip, at least for me, how it works, using when you want to change the angle, it kind of works better to actually click here in the number box and then drag, you know, to the right or to the left, so you can have more of a precision touch if you want to do just a slight movement. A lot of times when you try to use the wheel, at least for me, when you try to use the wheel, it can be a little bit harder to get like small, subtle movements. It kind of, sometimes you'll kind of always accidentally get a little bit more movement than maybe you ideally would want. So I like to go and click in the actual number box and then slide the mouse or the cursor in that area to start doing my adjustments. All right, so those are pivot points, and then you just keyframe all of that, right? So let's go back to the torso. I talked about the warper tool being used on the torso for breathing. That's very simple. I mean, I've done a lot of videos on using the warper tool to create this effect. Let's go back to the warper. I'm going to click on the left side viewer for the warper, so that'll show up over here. Take this to, let's go 100%. All right, so and then I just put, you know, you kind of know how the warper thing goes if you've seen some of my other videos. Just these 4 spots here, these got keyframed and animated through the warper in the inspector tab, so that and you see all of these kind of white notches here. These are the keyframes basically of these warper points on the chest for when breathing is happening, right? So let's kind of, as I kind of skip down the timeline, you can see the chest going up and down. Let's go ahead and press play, I guess. And you can see over here on this left side, the chest going up and down. I'm gonna press stop. Again, you're not getting the full speed here, but I'll show the final renders throughout the video. So the chest, the torso is going into a warper, which is going into a transform, going into a merge, yada, yada, yada. My point being is everything is kind of, once you really get used to working with the nodes in Fusion, you kind of get a natural idea for how things can connect together, and then it's more easy to play around with things. So you kind of have to figure out, you know, how you want to line things up, which body part should appear behind another body part if it's going to be animated and things like that. And it gets easy to move all of these things around because a lot of times you move things as a unit. So if you want to move where the torso is located, you'd highlight everything related to the torso. So you got the torso, the warper for the torso, the transform node for this torso, and the merge node for the torso. And you would disconnect it and then move all of these as one to wherever, you know, you need to move it. But it's fine where it's at right now, so we don't need to do that, but just kind of giving some kind of examples of just how you can really simplify how things work together. You just play around with Fusion and the nodes in it, and things like this become very easy to visualize and just think of how you would put characters together and different things like that. So this is a rough example. It's not even the, you know, I'm not saying it's the best example. I'm not saying it's the best way to do it. This is just one way that I do it. This is a way to construct a character, a 2D character's body in Fusion using nodes, and how you would be able to animate that 2D character's body, you know, actually animating individual parts. Now this was a very simplified way of doing it, because if you notice, there isn't any true, there is some joint movement, but there isn't like, there's no elbow bending, there's no knee bending going on, and all of that can be done. But the way I would do that is when I did my PNG images, when I created those, I would also separate, you know, upper arm from lower arm. So you wouldn't just have right arm, you'd have like the right upper arm, the shoulder down, the bicep to the elbow, and then you'd have right lower arm, the elbow down the forearm through to the hand. And then that way you could keyframe and animate an actual bending elbow, an actual joint bending, in the elbow. Same thing with the knee. Instead of just having singular, one singular leg, in this case I went extra lazy and just had both legs together as one unit, and then just used a little bit of trickery in terms of creating the running effect, which leads me to basically the final thing I wanted to talk about in terms of these node pieces, the animation in the legs. I almost forgot to talk about that. How I did that, because this is obviously, let's look at the left side viewer. These legs are obviously just one piece. It's just the lower body, just the original kind of pose from the Midjourney image. One leg down. In this image, clearly the right leg is down. So what I then did is went into the transform. Instead of trying to use two separate pictures and incorporate them together, that would have been at least one extra node, plus all of the transforms and different things that would go along with that node added to this. Instead of doing that, I took this same image and we go into transform. Over here in the inspector tab, I keyframed the flip. So you see, and not only did I keyframe the flip, I had to keyframe the centering as well, because when you flip let me try to make this a little bigger. Actually, let's go there. Okay. So like when you would flip the image of the legs, so let me just do this here. So you see, when you flip the image of the legs, because of the way the image is, it causes the positioning of the waist and all of that stuff to change in relation to the upper body, which obviously this looks janky. So when I did the keyframing, especially, it was pretty easy to do, particularly because it was a very short clip, like under 5 seconds. So when I did the keyframing, I would keyframe every like half a second a flip. And you see, the illusion you get is that right leg is going down, left leg is going down, right leg is going, the illusion is a very choppy running motion. Now, to go along with that though, I had to keyframe the positioning up here, specifically the center part, center x-axis, because like I said, hit flip and then you get this movement, the lower body seems to move a little bit over here. So I would have to come up here to the center and along with that keyframe move the body back. And so that's how in the final animation you get, now it still looks choppy and you still see the space in the final animation, you still see the space underneath, the space between the upper body and the lower body, but the legs do stay a lot more centered under the upper body than they would have if I hadn't been keyframing the center X position along with this flip here. So just imagine if I was doing the flip thing and didn't keyframe the center X position up here. Every time one of the legs went down, the body would be off, the lower body would be off position from the upper body to a just comedically drastic degree compared to what it ended up in the final version. I mean, you see how this looks like. It looks like the body has just completely detached and is about to run away from the rest of the body here. But so basically just kind of relatively, I guess, quote unquote, creative keyframing to just a still image to give the illusion of a running motion by simply flipping the image horizontally, keyframing that, and keyframing the actual positioning to keep things relatively lined up. So I think I'm going to cut the video short here. I feel like it's kind of ran long. I honestly haven't recorded a video like this in a good while, so I'm a little rusty on a lot of things. We'll see how this works out in the final edit, but hopefully this kind of helped you out in terms of node structure for the body of a 2D image when you want to do some animation. Again, animating arms, legs, the head, torso, joints, all of those type of things, while still keeping the character together as one. And then what I ultimately did, as I've talked about it in the past, in terms of exporting, the same principles apply. Once you have your character set up the way you want, once you have the animation set up the way you want, the timing, everything like that, then you deliver and you export. Let me actually go into the deliver tab so we can look at how the settings would actually be. Okay, here we go. So but what I do, once again, just for a refresher, QuickTime file, codec, you want to go to GoPro Cineform. This is what I usually do for just characters that have no background on them. RGB, you come down here and you make sure the export alpha box, make sure that is checked. And then, you pick the location where you want to save it to, title it, all of those type of things. That's up to you to do. And then, add to render queue and render all, and render it out as an MOV, or also known as a QuickTime file that you can then bring into most editing suites that I know about. I know MOV files will work in those. A lot of MOV files, once again, you might not be able to watch them by themselves on certain devices and things like that, but you can use them within most editing suites, and then put them in a project, render that project down the way you usually do. That is the video, you guys. Again, I apologize for it being kind of rough. I got to get back into the swing of things in terms of doing this style of video, the kind of longer style video. I hope I really got my point across in terms of how this structure worked and functions together. Keep messing around with Davinci Resolve and keep messing around with Fusion. Fusion is definitely one of those things. The more you just kind of mess around with it, research, learn about it, utilize tips from others, all of those type of things, it starts to become a lot more familiar to you and a lot more natural in terms of knowing your way around it, being able to experiment and still find your way back where you came from. Sometimes with Fusion, you start using it and you can get a little kind of, you don't get to freely do as much because you're afraid that you won't figure out how to undo whatever mistake you might be about to make. You want to get comfortable enough with it to where you can make mistakes experimenting and then find your way back from that mistake to fix your project and still stay on track and all of those type of things. Once you do that, it's a lot of fun to work with, a lot of good stuff you can do with it. So that is the video. Thank you for watching, and catch you on the next one.